with all the work that I've done over the many years and decades that I've been exploring this field, it just seems to me that we just need to be a bit kinder to each other. It's interested in also keeping itself alive and replicating itself and going on, but fundamentally it's keeping us with more humanity and joy. I do not think we need to suffer at work. I just don't think it's necessary. I think there are times, of course, when it's tough, but there's way too much unnecessary heartache. Yeah, smart stuff. It's thinking creatively, thinking about solving those sorts of issues as you go, definitely. And if you take my third point, it was getting the best out of those people. That person sounds like they've done exactly that. I love that story because it's like we're always out trying to find purpose out there. Trying to find the source of what it is through whatever means we're searching. Stop for a moment and really think about that. That's so powerful.
Welcome back to the Leading Boldly podcast. I'm Matt Clutterham.
And I'm Jenny Jarvis.
This is the podcast where we dive deep into the minds of visionary leaders, uncovering the strategies, the psychologies, and the insights that drive real impact. Today, we've an incredible guest, someone who has spent over 20 years helping leaders and teams unlock their full potential in quite a different way. Jonathan Arms is a leadership consultant, a chartered occupational psychologist, and the mastermind behind Thought Intelligence, a game-changing approach to leadership development. As the founder of Capital Shift, Jonathan has worked with some of the world's top organizations across industries as diverse as banking, fashion, healthcare, and even motorsport. He's an executive coach, a team transformation expert, and a true innovator in the world of leadership psychology. But beyond the titles and the accolades, Jonathan is someone who deeply understands what makes leaders tick, what holds them back, what propels them forward, and how they can navigate the ever-changing challenges of business and life with clarity and confidence. I'm really looking forward to this one. Jonathan, welcome to the Leading Boldly podcast.
Thank you, Matt. It's great to be here, and hi to both of you. Yeah.
Right, well, let's go in. So we always like to know a bit about our guests and how you were as a child. What was going on as a child, and did you expect to be where you are now?
Hi, Jenny. It's a great question. I love that. I love that question. I actually knew you were going to ask me that question because you said you would. And when I read it, I thought that is a really nice way to start looking at leadership, because in many ways, when we get into learning about leadership and learning about how the mind works, we're kind of accessing that part of us, that historical part of us, which was really alive and really creative and really kind of just vibrant as a child, So how was I as a child? I think I was pretty cool. I think I was pretty amazing, particularly up until about the age of 10 or 11. I think actually all children, have got this beautiful kind of capacity to be vibrant and alive. And I think we lose that a little bit as we go through our lives. And much of the psychology that we learn as we're in sort of our adult form is trying to remember that place of being really confident and clear thinking and creative and enjoying life as we do as children. So I think I was in a great place. Yeah, and I'm finding my way back there.
I love that answer. It's such a great answer, and very much in line. I really follow the work of Brené Brown and Glennon Doyle, and they talk about like getting to those ages where all of a sudden the artwork isn't correct and things don't look as they're supposed to, and all the creativity sort of gets chucked out the window all of a sudden.
Mm.
What was school like? Well, a common thing from guests we've had on this podcast is they didn't feel like they really fit in school. Is that something that you felt, or is your story of school different?
Well, I mean, I got two sons, and they're older now. But and I look back at the time when they were growing up, and they I just think the age between around 6 and 11, that sort of primary age is really is a great age, because you're free of many of the burdens of being an adult, and you're enjoying just being alive and vibrant. And I felt like that very much. And I suppose, like so many people, started to find it more difficult around sort of 13, 14, 15, and started to get a bit more challenging. But I loved school. I think it was a great experience. I rebelled a little bit when I was around 16, 17, probably. Got a bit fed up with the system and the way it was all operating, but found my way back in education eventually. And that's probably why I ended up studying psychology, because I was kind of interested in that journey, I guess, really from a very early age.
What led you to psychology?
Well, I got two answers to that question. The first part of psychology I studied, actually, I was studying sciences. When I was at school, I was weighing up, really. I didn't kind of particularly go down the science route. I didn't particularly go down the humanities route, and I didn't particularly go down the arts route. I sort of fell in the middle somewhere. And we didn't actually study psychology at my school, because it was quite a traditional kind of grammar school, and it didn't kind of go down that route. But I'd been brought up to consider and think about the sort of depth of the human condition. My parents, that the mealtime conversations were not about what was on telly. They were sort of more deep thinking kind of conversations. So I was really naturally I just brought up with that kind of introspective kind of thinking, reflective thinking. So it became really obvious to me to study science, and I went and did a life science degree originally, which was majoring in psychology. It did some biologies and some psychology, and there's some stats in it. And I did that degree, did fine on that, and then went on to study a master's degree, because there was a really attractive girl that also went on the course that I thought I might just follow.
I love that.
It was quite forward thinking of your parents, really. What did they do? What was going on with your parents?
Well, they were just very interested in the world of the mind and the mind and the soul. They were quite kind of interested in spiritual learning, and they were exploring that for themselves, and that's what the conversation was. So around the table and in the learning that I had when I was a child. So I was very aware of that, and we had a big house with lots of people in it, and I had lots of brothers and sisters, well, 2 brothers, 2 sisters, and lots of people were coming into the house, and conversations were around those sorts of subjects. So I heard it. It was very much in my thinking and my awareness for most of my upbringing.
I'm really pleased to hear that, because my girls are very unwelcoming to those sorts of conversations, and I just kind of hope that they just hear it and it goes in at some point. They come out and go, oh yeah.
Oh, don't worry about that, because I thought my parents were idiots at the time. And that's still soaked in. The information's still soaked in, and you can't really help but just take it on as something that becomes your own. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that your girls will be psychologists at the end of this, but I'm certain they'll be interested in it.
I think that's unlikely, but yes, that's the plan.
Great.
It's so psychology is a massive field, like huge. So is there a story behind how you ended up applying it to the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, that I have thought about that question, actually, because I've been asked it before, and psychology is huge. So you can work in all sorts of fields. You can work in clinical, you can work in forensic, you can work in criminology, educational. There's lots of spaces of and then there's the whole occupational area, which is around working as I do with leadership and coaching and helping organizations through transformations and developing teams. But there's a whole other area of psychology in business around marketing and around advertising that you can apply psychological principles to use those principles to benefit the job that you're doing. why did I get into it? I got into it. I was just interested in business. I think I just did. I really knew I didn't want to work in the clinical field. I just didn't want to do that. I was interested in working with people who were in business. And actually, as I've developed my career, I've become more and more happy with that decision. And the reason why is because people who are leading teams or organizations are contacting a huge number of people, impacting a huge number of people. So actually, if you're interested in the well-being of humanity, leadership is a really interesting place to go, because everybody who's working is working in a space where there are leaders. So if the leadership is good in an organization, it has a massive knock-on effect to not just the people who are in the business, but the community that those people serve. So I just paint the picture. If you have, we all know this experience where we're led well, we leave our work, we go home, we're in a good place. Our spirit and soul is good. Our emotional place is good. We have clear thinking. We can transfer that out to our friends and our family and the people around our community. And conversely, if we're led badly, we get fed up and annoyed by the world, we can go home and carry that through. So I think actually leadership is not, it has for me, it's working with leaders certainly to improve the commercial benefit to the organization that those leaders are working for. But I'm very interested in the community that those people go back into and serve, as a secondary benefit, to any work that we might do with those people. I think I'm doing something useful for the human species. I hope so.
We totally agree. We love that. One of our ethoses is that we believe that it's businesses that actually have the greatest opportunity to create positive change for the world and for people, and our sort of core mission beyond helping them successful is that we feel like we can help make the world a better place.
It's the ripple effect.
The ripple effect. So
what's so interesting about that is here you and we're the three of us are sitting here saying we would like to make the world a better place. Well, how come? Why are we so interested in that? I just think it's a really interesting element of the human dynamic is you speak to most people, if not everybody in the world, they want to contribute positively to the world, and they want to make the world a better place for people. Now, I just think that's a really interesting thing, isn't it? Because nobody asked us to do that, right?
Yeah. I never thought to stop and question that actually in that way. We just, it's something we just have said, and it's like, oh yeah, why?
I think partly we do see so much negative in the world, and it's the negative. I always say people kind of thrive around adversity rather than the good stuff. So I think when you're constantly hearing all the bad stuff, it drags everything down. Your physiology, like your body feels bad, because if you're taking in bad stuff all the time, everything feels bad. And I want to stop that narrative. So I've worked with loads of people who say, oh, the workplace is toxic and they don't like me because I'm too positive. And that's a really common story. And I have to keep being positive because it will leak out and we won't be able to help it. It will have to leak out. So I think that from my point of view, it's about just making everybody that bit happier by being happier yourself.
Well, I think that's lovely. And I think, if everybody was doing the same thing, then how different would the world look? I don't remember who it was. I think it was Aldous Huxley a long time ago was being asked to speak about, all his investigations and studies about in the world. And he was a great philosopher. And he came to a keynote speech some decades ago, and he presented his speech back to the people who were in the conference and said, with all the work that I've done over the many years and decades that I've been exploring this field, it just seems to me that we just need to be a bit kinder to each other. And, you know, we can sit here and minimize those sorts of statements, but actually, you know, if we were a little bit kinder, then how different would the world look? But it strikes me that there's a precursor to that.
It's not really rocket science, is it?
Well, it's not rocket science, but it's very difficult sometimes for people to do it. And why is that? Because there's a precursor to being kind to other people, which is you need to really be kind to yourself and understand how the human experience is playing out, because that's perhaps what we might talk about later. But one of the great misconceptions of the way that we see the world, it seemingly causes a great deal of suffering, and perhaps we ought to discuss that at some point during this talk, because if we could get beyond that, then people would be more kind and more naturally.
Well, we can talk about it now.
Yeah.
So
let's
what are
dive
your
straight
thoughts
in
on that?
Okay. What would you like to know?
So just explain for our complete layman listeners what you mean by the human condition, and how is it generally playing out?
Oh, okay. Well, I think the best way to start that conversation is to look at the really innocent misunderstanding of the human condition, which, by the way, if it helps, I get caught up with every day, which is that the world is happening to us. Yeah. Put simply, that things are happening, and Jenny, you were talking about, you know, all the stuff that we see on the news, and we hear all these stories, and you know, this bad news stuff. You know, we read we have a copy of the Week magazine, you know, the summary of the news each week in our house, and there's all these stories about what's going on in the world, and you kind of sit and read it and you go, oh my goodness, it's depressing, you know. And there's even a section in the magazine that is just entitled "It Wasn't All Bad," and then there's 2 or 3 really nice stories about, I don't know, animals doing something nice or whatever it might be. There's a tiny little slither at the bottom of one page of this whole magazine. But we get caught in this, and it looks to us like the world is happening to us. But of course it does. It just looks apparently like that. So you see you read a miserable story, or you read a story about some suffering, and you feel miserable. So it looks like that one thing has caused the other. But the world doesn't actually, the human experience, to your point, Matt, doesn't actually work like that. Things are happening in the world, but we're experiencing our thinking about them. We're not experiencing them, and that's kind of easy to comprehend intellectually quickly. But when we sit and really consider that point for a time, it makes a huge difference to the way that we can be. So we're not so caught up in feeling like the world is a depressing place, which I think a lot of people suffer from the misunderstanding of the human condition. Mm-hmm. If we could see beyond that, then it would become an easier and much more pleasant place to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate that's not explaining it very well, but it might take a little more time to really open up that conversation. But you know, essentially, the world is not happening to us. We are creating. It was a Winston Churchill quote, actually. He said it rather beautifully. He said, you know, as we create our universe as we go along. That's his quote. We create our universe as we go along. In other words, we are constantly creating the world that we live in.
Yeah.
Right? By the thinking that we're in. Okay. And that's very different to it happening to us. The power is not out there, it's in here. If we can see that and feel that, then we suffer less.
I saw a quote last week that went something along the lines of the best way to predict the future is to create the future.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, brilliant. And the present. I mean, I think the best way the best way to live is to not try and predict the future. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, and I see a lot of expectations. People expect things to come, and they go, "Oh, this scenario has happened, therefore I'm going to feel X."
Yeah.
And when you create that narrative, guess what? You feel X. What a shocker.
Well, there's a great quote, expectation is premeditated disappointment.
Yes. Yeah. And I lived about 40 years of my life in that, and it is really miserable.
Yeah. And if you go back to some of the sort of, spiritual teachings, if you look at Buddhism, it's based entirely around suffering being as a result of expectation, pretty much. But then, how do you stop expectation? That's the question. The brain then goes, okay, that sounds great, but how do you do that? And then it starts to get more interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I have heard, we know as brand builders ourselves that we are constantly just working with perception. We're never working particularly with reality. We are just working with generally consumer or culture perception of the brand. And I've heard a lot of what I would consider very publicly successful leaders talk about the fact that their biggest success came once they fully understood that the world was malleable. Do you think that sort of plays into the same thing, that once we understand that actually when we control how we perceive things, that then we can do much more?
Yeah, I love that point. And what I love about that question is it allows us to relate back to what's in it for me. I can say, if I can understand something about the human condition, I can live a better life. I can get more about done that I want to get done. I think it was Steve Jobs who was particularly clear. I can't remember. I can remember no quotes. My skills. And if I quote things, I get it wrong as well.
Yeah. I get the same.
I get the flavor across the reason.
You get the general gist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But he talked a lot about, although he wasn't perfect by any means, but he talked a lot about seeing that the world was malleable. To your point, Matt, I think it was, really noticing that you build the future. And I didn't really understand that. I remember hearing that, when I was younger, I remember hearing people talk about, you create your own future, you can be anything you want to be, all the things like that. And I remember thinking, that's just rubbish. I'll never be able to run, a sub 100 meters. It's just not possible. But it wasn't, of course, that they were talking about. It was the recognition of the absolute awesome power of the mind. It is truly awesome. And I've said this on many places, if you just consider the human mind, it is the most complex thing that we understand and know of, certainly on this planet, but in the universe as we've yet found. The human brain is that, and we have one each. How cool is that? We have one. And we have the most complex thing on the planet, right? In our skull, each one of us. And it does something really incredible. If we notice it, we take it for granted, but it does something incredible. It never stops creating. Never. It never stops creating solutions, ideas, thought in the form of thought. It's constant and endless. And most of those thoughts, or if we listen carefully, those thoughts have the capacity and want to give us information which is beneficial to solving our problems, to making our life better, if we can hear them. But unfortunately, we also listen to all those other thoughts that come in, which are fear-based and, catastrophizing and creating a world of noise because of the fact that we've misunderstood the origin of the experience of the human condition. We think that the world is happening to us, which then leads us to be fearing it. When we realize that the world is not happening to us, it's an internal job, those fear-based thoughts kind of lose their power because they don't have the grip. And then we can hear and access all those other thoughts that we know we have, which will lead us to solutions, creative ideas, and commercial innovation and wonderful leadership. And that's what I'm interested in working with people on doing, is quietening down the thinking which is not in service and amplifying the thinking that is in service to whatever it is they're doing.
Yeah, my life certainly changed when I embraced that whole premise of it's not happening to me, it's happening around me. I get to choose my responses. And it absolutely changed my whole outlook.
So you've worked across loads of different industries, right from finance to fashion. Is there a common thread that runs through all of them that leadership teams come to you and they say, Jonathan, I need you to help me solve this?
Yeah, I think so. Let me think about that. I think it doesn't really matter what industry you're in. You're working with people, and people are fundamentally the same in the fact that we all share the same mechanism to how we live and how we experience. We're experiencing thinking, which is happening in our awareness, and we're feeling our thinking. That's kind of what's going on. And we're doing that moment to moment. And we think we've got a handle on everything, but we've got a handle on very little. That's the other, truth about, I think, the human condition. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't plan. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be, astute and thoughtful, but we're in the present moment, experiencing our thinking. So does it make a difference across? Not really. The leadership experience is very similar. I mean, culturally, of course, there are differences in organizations that make a difference to what they might be thinking about, but the principles sitting behind the way that they're thinking are the same. What tends to be what was the question? Are there sort of common denominators?
Is there a common thread that people, a common problem that people come to you that they know they've got and say, Jonathan, I need you to help me solve this?
Yeah, I mean, broadly speaking, if you're looking at a team, it's asking the question, how do we perform better? It's as simple as that. How do we make ourselves a high performing team? We're okay, we're doing pretty good, but we need to maximize on our ability to perform. What gets in the way of that? It's often ego and fear. It's often a lot of self-criticism. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, I mean, you'll have heard it, no doubt, lots of people talking about imposter syndrome. All that means, I believe, is some thinking about myself, which is that I'm not as good as I could be. I think that's all that, and waiting to be found out. When are they going to find out that I don't know as much as I think I do? Yeah, and then on that point, I think one of the great reliefs of working with executive teams, for them anyway, is that they realize that finally that everybody else is has the same sort of level of doubt as they do, which I think self-doubt, which I think is quite useful.
I think imposter syndrome generally is just a lack of feeling comfortable, and people believe they should feel comfortable if they're doing a certain role. They think, well, I'm doing this role, therefore I should feel comfortable. But when you're comfortable, you go for the next thing. Well, that's a promotion, or you do something bigger, or you go for the next thing, and then you're uncomfortable again, and then you get this imposter syndrome that they call it. But actually, it's just a feeling of discomfort.
Well, I think there's sort of depth to that point, Jenny, really. And I think one of the quotes that I'll get wrong was there's a guy called Sydney Banks who talked a lot about the understanding and principles of the mind. And one of the things he said, don't quote me on this, but he said something like this, was, if there's one thing that would change humanity, it's for people to not fear their experience.
Yeah.
Now, I remember reading that and hearing that and thinking, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But since I've sat with it, it's like, oh, that's super powerful. Because if you imagined a life where you or I did not fear the actual experience we were in, regardless of that experience, we would never suffer from imposter syndrome. We would never feel that level of, well, we would suffer from imposter syndrome. We wouldn't mind suffering from it. It would just be an okay experience that we were in. And the reason why that's so powerful is because we are then able and allowing ourselves to experience the whole gamut of the human emotion, right? And so much of the traditional psychology approach might be to try and limit the emotional experience. We're not suffering. Well, actually, maybe suffering, maybe feeling uncomfortable or feeling impostery or feeling discomfort of any sort is part of the human condition. How would that be? How would that be for us all if we just thought, well, actually feeling miserable every now and again is part of the human condition?
I love
that. It just is.
Yeah.
And the thing that really seems to grip us is thinking that we shouldn't feel it, which then creates more noise around it and then makes us feel more miserable. Whereas if we're feeling miserable and we're going, okay, this is my miserable moment, there it is. Oh, look, it's going. Somehow when we sort of allow it to be there, it disappears because it's not a thing. It's just a moment.
That's awesome.
And I find that is the key to not having ongoing month after month, year after year anxiety.
Yeah.
When you just accept that in this moment, I've got anxiety and I'm feeling that in my body, but it's often for a valid reason. So now I'm feeling a valid form of anxiety.
Or not a valid reason. I mean, sometimes it's like, well, it just comes along and it's just there. And it's, I mean, one of the things I was thinking about earlier when you were talking was often this is due simply to habitual thinking. It's just become a habit. And we've done it so many times. The lazy brain just goes, oh, well, I just shove you a few anxious thoughts because I can't think what else to do.
Because we're constantly creating. So it needs to create something.
That's a great way of putting it. And it's, so I'm just going to give you a little bit of my creative idea. I can't think of anything else. I'm going to throw you you're not quite good enough thought or whatever. And if we take it seriously, here's the thing we just talked about. If we take it seriously, we make it a thing. We make it our world. All, as I see it, this is a little bit controversial, but I'm going to say it as a fact, but all poor mental health seems to me anyway to come from overthinking.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from ruminating about stuff. Now, if we feel anxious or we feel low or we feel shame or we feel anger or whatever it is, some of those things that we don't like the feeling of, if we make it a thing that we shouldn't be feeling, it kind of seems to mushroom and it has its own power. Whereas if it's just a thing that's happening, then it loses its power.
So yeah, that's fascinating. I actually suffered quite a few years ago now with depression for a while for some pretty valid reasons. But one of the things that really helped me, I would say, come out of the other side was, and it's funny because, as a brand builder, I was kind of sat on the tool all the time and not knowing about it. And that was stories and understanding that actually everything that was going on in my head was just a story that I was creating. And actually, if I just took control of the stories that I believed and didn't believe, and the stories I was writing, that actually I could take back some control over how I was feeling, and that made a massive difference to me.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And the story is so interesting story, isn't it? Because, one of the things that we do if we're working with a group is show a picture, and it's a picture of something happening, and then ask the group a question. Well, what led to this and what's going to happen? And immediately the brain goes, and it creates a world, a whole story. Yeah. There's like one person standing there with some, something, and there's they've got a whole backstory. Literally, they know where this person's come from, what's happening now, where it's going to go. It's instantaneous. The brain is creating all of the time. So, your point's a really great one. It wants to create stories. It wants to, and why is it doing that? It's doing that so that it can, what's the brain's main function? Is to keep us safe and secure.
Yeah.
Primarily, that's what it's here to do. And it's interested in also keeping itself alive and replicating itself and going on. But, fundamentally, it's keeping us safe. And it's trying to do that with the best way, it's a guesser. It's going to guess. And we think everything that we hear in our thinking is truth. It's just not.
Yeah.
I remember listening to this lovely piece of work where the voice in our head, the one that talks to us, telling us all the things that we ought to be doing and the stuff that we're not good enough yet at, and the fact that we need to be doing more of that or less of that. I love this idea. If you lifted that voice out of your mind and put it into a person next to you who was walking along next to you, telling you all this stuff, what would you ask that person to do? Very politely. I'm sure it would, there'd be lots of F's in it. But because it's in our own thinking, what do? We listen. We listen to every word it says, and we believe every word it says. Now, that's a sign of craziness.
Yeah. And it's a great exercise we do with our clients, that very thing but they create a little persona, or we call it the troll. So they, whatever it looks like, and they have conversations with it, and it really works.
Yeah, because we just believe. I don't know if you can see it, but you probably can't. But it's a little badge, and it says, "Don't believe everything you think" on it.
Yeah.
I love that.
And it's like, well, if we don't believe everything we think, maybe we can just think stuff and not be fearful of it.
Absolutely. And we talked about a few psychological principles over the last bit, but what do you believe every leader should understand and apply in their work around psychology and the way our mind works?
Well, there's a few really, really great wins. I remember working with a CEO of a big hospital, and it was a huge transformation program, a €1 billion transformation program she was heading up, and it was really it was really transformational for her to realize a very simple point, okay, which was that people didn't think the same. And that sounds kind of obvious, right? But she had a really big insight into understanding that people not just don't think the same as each other, but cannot. It's not possible for me or you or any of us to think the same. We experience, we gather information through our sense organs, our eyes and ears and so on. We gather data, energy, which then gets interpreted by our minds, and then that's pushed out as a thought. So our experience is a filtering of data through the decades, in my case a few decades, right, of experience and background. Okay, so I'm experiencing that, and you're both experiencing the same circumstances, the same data coming in to you, but interpreted through a whole different myriad of lenses. Okay, so you and I will never see the same thing or feel the same thing. We can't. So if and when we know that, we can never really be disappointed with somebody not understanding us, because it's incredible that we do understand each other at this level. So if you're in a boardroom, right, and you're sitting around, I mean, we all have this experience where you sit in the meeting and you're sharing your really well-designed presentation and your lovely PowerPoint deck, and everyone's nodding around the meeting room, and when it gets to action, they're all saying, taking their notes and saying, yes, I'll do that, boss, we'll definitely get that done. And you come back a week later and nobody's done anything that they said they were going to do, or they can't remember, or they've not understood that. Well, it's because we think everyone's going to be experiencing the same thinking as we are in that moment. But when we realize that's not possible, we get really super clear about our expectations, and we get less and less disappointed with people thinking differently to us. It doesn't mean that we allow it to keep continuing. We find ways around it so we can operate more efficiently. So I think understanding that we live in separate realities is incredibly important for businesses.
Yeah.
I think the second one I'd put to you, if I could just make another, I mean, there's lots and lots, but the second one is that at the heart of every human being is infinite potential for new thought and creativity and ideas and energy and capacity, regardless of whether they're going to use it or not. It's there. So if we see that in the people around us, the people we employ, the people who are on our team, we will talk to that part of them. I promise you, when people start to do that, the level of potential that's brought out of those people is just exponentially better. Because if you can imagine somebody talking, I'm imagining it for myself, talking to you, really knowing how brilliant you are, you'll be brilliant.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, that's great. We're all about being boldly different here at Q Branch, and you are doing something boldly different with leadership, coaching, and consulting through thought intelligence and capital shift. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, sure. Well, Capital Shift is the name of the company. And in fact, we changed the company name and brand in about 2015-16. I've been working under my own name really as a consultant up until that point. And Thought Intelligence is a brand, a trademark brand for our description of the human condition, which is kind of what we've been talking about. I think it's quite a cool brand, don't you? Thought Intelligence.
A really cool brand. I love it. Yeah. Yeah, I'm quite jealous that I didn't come up with that one myself, to be honest.
It's trademark. You can't have it.
Yeah.
So it's really an exploration of the impact of understanding deeply how the mind works and how that has an impact on individual, team, and organizational growth. And the work that we're doing is just wonderful in allowing people to do two things. One is to maximize the potential that they have. So back to the point about really knowing that we all have this wonderful kind of capacity to be so much better than we might be. And it doesn't mean that we have to be, and it doesn't mean that we always will be, but we have that capacity. Whether it lies dormant or not is another matter. We might have to manage that through our leadership. I can't remember the second one I was going to say, but oh yes, I know. What I was wanting to say was we maximize the potential that we have through understanding how the mind works. And the other benefit of that is that we can live in our work lives and our personal lives with more joy, with more ease, with more fun. So for me, performance improvement comes in two forms. It comes in doing the thing we do better, but it also comes in the form of doing what we do with more humanity and joy. I do not think we need to suffer at work. I just don't think it's necessary. I think there are times, of course, when it's tough, but there's way too much unnecessary heartache that happens in the workplace as a result, I would suggest, of not really understanding how the mind works. So thought intelligence is unpacking that for people, understanding the mechanics of the human condition. And we do that the way that we work is we'll either work, if I'm working with an organization, I would tend to work with a senior person in the business, depending on the size of the business. It might be the CEO, or it might be a team lead if it was a much bigger organization. But it would tend to be a C-suite person, work with them personally one-to-one, and then that then moves into them getting interested for the wider business. And that's face-to-face or together, or we've also devised this rather nice online program, which perhaps we get a chance to talk about at some point.
Yeah, no, we absolutely will come to that. I'm gonna go into brand positioning mode now. Why would I choose you guys? Why would I come to you rather than the myriad of traditional leadership trainers, consultants out there?
Oh, that's easy, because you've tried all of them and it hasn't made much difference. You've been around the color charts and the models and the trying to understand each other conversations, and it hasn't made really enough sustainable difference to your performance, which is you're here to do. You're here to have a commercial impact. You're here to see what it is you're trying to do get better, and it's the best you've ever had before is a slight blip upwards, and then it's drifted back to how it's been in the past. And you've done it for 20 years, and you're fed up with the fact that it keeps going around the same circle. And you need to look deeper, because it's something you're touching the surface, and you know that. You know you're just touching the surface. You know there's something more fundamental at stake, and you need to get there, and you haven't found a way of doing that yet.
I would think this is quite a hard question, but I don't think you're going to struggle to answer this. Do you think it's more important for a leader to lead themselves or lead the team?
Well, I think it's the old oxygen mask analogy, right? We know that one, yeah. I think it's critical that we understand our own sense of self first. I think we put the oxygen mask on ourselves before we help any others, right? I think it's almost impossible to lead a group of people if you don't really understand what your function as a leader is, or your purpose. I mean, we're very interested in understanding personal purpose. The way I always describe personal purpose is the America's Cup yachts. There's yachts with huge sails that go speeding through the water at a great rate. They have massive area, square footage of or square meterage of sail, and the analogy is you want that boat to go through choppier waters and go faster, right? What keeps the boat upright? Well, I'll ask you the question. What keeps a boat upright?
I'm going to say a combination of the keel underneath and the set of the sail.
Yeah, well, it's the keel that keeps it upright.
Yeah.
Right. And if you've seen a keel of America's Cup yacht, it's massive.
Oh, they're huge, yeah.
It's this great big lump of iron or sits down under the boat to keep it upright, right? So if you want to put up more sail and you want to put up more, you sail through choppier waters and sail quicker, you got to have more keel. Now, for me, our sense of self and the sense of the purpose that we have for who we are and what we stand for is the keel. it holds us. It holds us upright. It holds us steady. And, for a company, it might be a mission. For a team, it might be some sort of, set of values. But that's the thing that we've really got to get clear about. Because if we're leading a team from a place with very little keel, we'll just keep falling over.
That's brilliant. And it's really aligned with the same analogy that we use, which is we can't build a skyscraper brand on the foundations of a 2-bed semi.
Exactly right.
Like it doesn't work. It just falls over.
Yeah, you got to get your foundations right. You redo that. It makes complete sense. And for me, to your point, I think is we've got to get the foundations of our own thinking right. Our own mind. If we understand that and feel settled, if we feel grounded, I mean, it's nice because I like the foundation word, because for me, I often use the word grounding, and it's a similar sort of feel to it. It's something about connecting to the earth. If we feel grounded in ourselves and settled in ourselves, a couple of things happens. One is that we can express ourselves clearly, and we understand what we stand for. And the other thing is that people listen. People are much more likely to listen and hear us if we feel settled. There's something about the human condition again that can hear inauthenticity, and I always love this idea, leadership's really simple. Okay. There's only 3 things you got to do, right? There's 3 things. Okay. Are you ready? This is it.
Yeah.
Leadership in a nutshell.
One is to get really clear about where you want to be and where you want to go. Yeah. To get clear on your goal. The second thing is to absolutely make sure that everybody comes with you. Right. And I love this idea that, you might be really clear on where you want to be and what you stand for. But if you're at the top of the hill that you've decided you're going to take, and you turn around and all your team has just gone off to the pub or something, you haven't really led very well. Right. So you need to be clear on where you're going. You need to bring everybody with you. And while you're doing that, you need to get the absolute best out of those people.
And in that point, so you're at the top of the hill and everyone's gone to the pub. The reason they've gone to the pub is because there is a stronger leader with a stronger mission and value that may not be positive, it may be negative, who's getting everyone to go to the pub.
Well, I think it's called a pint of Guinness, Jenny, actually. I think that's the stronger leader.
Is the what, sorry?
It's the pint of Guinness.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Not plugging Guinness there. Other brands.
It depends. Not for me. It depends what's at the top of the hill as well, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it depends on so many factors. It's kind of simply put, but it depends on But it depends so much on whether we want to hang out with that leader. I mean, most of the time, we lead well if we're kind of good to be around, which means that we've done something from our leadership perspective for ourselves to feel settled, to feel grounded, to be free of too much ego. Ego is fine, but it's like not being kind of free of that arrogant ego that sometimes comes in leadership. Clear on purpose. Yeah. All those
and
qualities.
Real connection with those people who are the let's go to the pub people, I think is essential in that leadership. I remember speaking to somebody who said, I just can't get the team to come on board with me. There's this particular person who's really negative and bringing everyone down. And I said, okay, so what have you done with that person? Have you gone and spoken to them? And they went and spoke to them, found out about their mining background and their family history, and then went, what would you do in this situation? And they were really happy to give their whole shooting match of what they would do. And as soon as you brought that negative person along, everyone else just follows behind.
Yeah, smart stuff. It's thinking creatively, thinking about solving those sorts of issues as you go, definitely. And, if you take my third point, it was getting the best out of those people. That person sounds like they've done exactly that. They've got the best out of that person who was, for whatever reason, feeling upset and disgruntled. Another thing about leadership is, people might disagree with this, but most people agree that everybody coming to work is doing their best, even if it seems like they're not. It's probably the best they can do. at that point, even if they're being disruptive or difficult. That's probably the best they can do. There aren't many people who consistently say, I'm going to go to work and make a mess of things today. Yeah.
This is a message I've been telling so many people, and it's the same with kids in school. Kids do not go to school in order to cause chaos. They do not get up in the morning and go, right, I'm going to go in and cause chaos today. They're just in bad places. That means that they respond in ways that aren't helpful.
Well, that's so beautiful. So, and again, it's a little bit like the question we were asking earlier about why are we interested in helping each other? So how come that's basically true, that humanity wakes up in the morning and wants to do its best. We take that for granted as well.
That's true.
But isn't it kind of cool that's if we could all really notice that everybody around us was really doing their best and work with that, wouldn't that change things so hugely? How many times have you spoken to people or even felt it yourself, and I can include myself in this, where somebody's behaving in a way which seems unhelpful, that we take it personally. We think they're there to get us or out to get. Yeah, there is some manipulation that goes on sometimes. There's some politics that plays out, in some organizations more than others, but mostly it doesn't. Mostly people are just trying to do their best. It's not personal.
Yeah.
See that would be great.
We've touched a little bit about purpose and joy and things like that in the workplace. Now, if we roll back to being in the fields and tilling the soil, the purpose was to feed our family. And really through the Industrial Revolution, a similar thing. But things have really shifted, haven't they? Like meaning has moved from religion to the workplace quite a lot. Are you seeing that on the ground happen more and more? And do you think it's only going to continue?
What, the move to
the move of search for meaning from the workplace?
That's a great question. I mean, I think life was kind of easier when the purpose was just to sort of make enough money for the day, and we didn't have to sort of dwell on the question all that much because we were just too knackered at the end of the day. And I think, and I've noticed also that there are some easy ways of creating purpose in life, which probably includes family and and I think there are times in people's lives where purpose gets more challenging, to find purpose. And I do think that we need a sense of purpose to feel part. I think humanity, I think we know that we're part of something bigger. I think we know that we're not just isolated kind of balls of life moving around. I think we feel the connection between us all. I think I think we understand on one level or not that we're one level or another. We're part of nature, and I think that we very naturally, want to connect back to that knowing. So we search for it. We search for it through all sorts of ways, and I think we're searching for I'm not sure it's the right place to talk about it, but I think we're searching for a deeper purpose. Actually, I think we're searching for an understanding of what it is to be alive and human, and trying to make meaning of it. It's what's life about question. And I love the old the tale, the Native American, the First Nation American Sioux tribal tale of the creator creating. This is the story, creating mankind and having the secret, having the source of understanding the purpose of being alive, but knowing that mankind is not yet ready to hear it, so decides to hide it, to allow humanity to evolve, and then when humanity's ready, it'll become clear. So the creator asks the eagle and ask the eagle, and the eagle drops down out of the sky, and the creator says, where should we hide it? This secret. And the eagle says, hide it at the top of the highest mountain. And the creator says, no, mankind will look there. They'll climb to the highest mountain before they're ready. So the creator asks the whale, and the whale says, hide the secret at the bottom of the ocean. And the creator says, no, mankind is an explorer. They'll dive to the bottom of the ocean before they're ready. And then the bison comes along and says, dig a great hole in the Great Plain and hide it there. And then the creator says, no, they're agriculture, they're farmers. They'll toil the land and find it before they're ready. And then a little mole pops up out of the earth, and little blind mole, and says, I know, hide it inside them. They'll never look there. And I love that story, because it's like we're always out trying to find purpose out there. Trying to find the source of what it is through whatever means we're searching for. But I think part of the human condition is the journey is to realize that it's not out there at all. It's an internal job.
Perfect story. I realized the punchline about halfway through, and it's so true. I'm definitely going to be writing about that.
But I love the image that I have. It's totally stereotype and inappropriately culturally kind of crazy, but the idea of them in a circle around a fire with the pipe, and they're passing the pipe around, telling the story.
But they did do that. So it's not. I've been very much in those circles where my grandma lived in just outside Vancouver, and there was a lot of Native American First Nations people there, and they used to have the powwow, and we would go along and watch with all the headdresses and the dancing and the singing, and we'd listen to it all night, and that's exactly what they did.
Okay.
And I think we've lost those things.
Well, I think that the thing that's interesting about that is, of course, this is not new news, right? It's been and they would have passed that down through hundreds of generations, and of course that was known well before those generations. This is not new, but I think the way that we operate in the world is so. I mean, one of the reasons why we started Capital Shift and moved into thought intelligence was because the leadership development programs that I had been running for 20 years at that point were good. We were getting some great responses, really, really good. Traditional leadership training, models, understanding self, perception, and so on. Really great. Great responses, people saying they're having really profound changes and so on. But I knew that it wasn't really getting to the point. And there was something in me, and I didn't know how to get to that point at that stage in my learning. But I knew it wasn't enough. And it's becoming increasingly obvious to me that people don't need more information. The information is everywhere. If you want to learn about how to time manage or delegate or coach or do any of that sort of stuff, you just GPT it. You'll get a whole thing. You get a logo drawn up about how to do it. You'll get the lot just given to you. That's not the issue anymore. The issue for leadership and businesses is to have those leaders in the organization understand the true power of the mind, see past all the crazy amount of noise that's coming at them, and think clearly, make clear decisions, get really, really create space around the awesome power of the mind, and use that awesome power to not just keep doing the same old stuff. We've got to make use of the mind in the way that AI and knowledge is unable to do, which is beautiful, wise, conscious creativity and human connection, which is going to become more and more and more valuable. It will be the competitive edge for organizations, because us humans continue to develop, and we are the ones who will be doing all of this stuff still, even while the machines are ticking along in the background.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thought Intelligence. So it's an online course. It's a self-study course that people can do. And we'll put the link to that in the show notes. But why should people do it?
Yeah, I mean, Thought Intelligence is the brand for understanding how the mind works. And what happened was we taught that for 8 years or something. And then we're asked by a client to create a scalable teaching of that, so that they're able to get out into their much larger organization without having to put people through a long residential program. And also it matched what people were looking to learn. I mean, still residential programs are super useful, but having some sort of e-learning platform was what people want as well. So we created, I really think now it's going to it sound a bit funny, but I'm actually not very good at being self-congratulating, and I'm quite kind of I'm quite inclined to want to improve everything I do. But I do think this is a really good program. I'm really impressed by it. I'm impressed myself, which I'm kind of excited about. And I've seen quite a lot of people through this program now, and the results are they're better than I thought. I'm surprised at how good they are, because we're dealing with a subject which is quite abstract in a way. We're dealing with understanding how the mind works, right? We're not dealing with how to understand a particular formula or make something, or have some sort of technical understanding. It's quite psychological and philosophical to a point. And I wasn't sure how well it would translate, but it translates beautifully. So it's a 7-module program. It has the capacity for people to. It's really beautifully designed. Not by us. We did the content, but design was a design company who are great. Really great company. And it's a program which people can self-learn the mechanics of the human condition. And why would they want to do that? Because they would then access that ability, that great ability, that wonderful ability that the mind has to be better at what it does and to do it with more peace and joy. And most people who I talk to are pretty keen on those two things. It's 7 modules, as I say, and it takes you through really understanding what it is that you want to achieve in your working life, in your personal life, through to a deep understanding about the human condition, to making sure that you got what you wanted at the very beginning.
And it's not just for corporations, is it? Anyone can go on and.
Anyone can go on and do it individually. Yeah. Yes, they're super welcome to do that. At the moment, we're using it pretty much exclusively with teams and organizations. It's fantastic for team development. It's fantastic for, we're actually in conversations at the moment with 2 large organizations to have them included in their induction process as well, so that there's a deep understanding of how the mind works before people start going into work, because they want to incorporate that into the culture of the organization.
That's brilliant.
And to the point, yeah, and I think it is really beautiful, because if you think about what we were just talking about earlier, understanding the human condition, working a business will become the thing that is difficult for organizations to hold on to, while there's all of this incredible amount of data coming at us in the form of digital information and tech. So.
We're living in very uncertain times at the moment. Some people don't like that uncertainty. So what one piece of advice could you give to leaders? Because we need leaders now more than we ever have, I think, positive leaders. What one piece of advice would you give them to navigate the uncertainty?
We are living in uncertain times, but I can't remember not living in uncertain times. And I really have reflected on that and thought, is it more uncertain now than it has been? And I've asked that question over the last 30 years, and everybody always says yes. So I'm not sure if it is or it isn't.
I would say it's not. I think that it's probably not uncertain times. It is those labels that people are giving it. But given that we have these labels, people feel uncertainty.
I think they do. So my advice, Jenny, would be absolutely know that whatever comes your way in the future, your brain will provide you for free, without any effort on your part, solutions to solve and deal with those uncertainties, which are in service to you. Now, let me just give you an example of that, right? So here we are. Here you are in your studio. I don't know what your studio looks like, but I'm guessing it might have some doors and windows, right? Now, I certainly got a door, I hope.
Got lots of windows.
Yeah.
Less doors.
Oh, right. Those doors and windows, whatever that you've got there, all shut. They all lock, right? Unexpectedly. Shutters come down, the door's locked, you can't get out, right? Assuming you have a relatively calm mind, what does your brain start doing?
Looking for things, looking for keys, things to prise things open.
Right. Now, just before we do that, 10 seconds ago, were you thinking about keys or things to prise things open with?
No.
No, but now you are. So your brain is just giving you some possible solutions, right? It's done it for free. You don't have to work at it. You don't have to sit there and say, right now, I've got, it gives you them. Okay. Now, that's a really simple but pretty remarkable truth about the human condition. We get given solutions by just simply the nature of the design that we're in, if we're in a relatively calm and grounded space. If we're not, we go, oh my God, it's freaking out, and we start panicking. Okay. And we're doing that because we've misunderstood the human condition. So my advice would be, work on your personal grounding, get clear about how the mechanics of the mind works, and you will find solutions to your problems. I've just been working with a client who has gone through it's a retail-based client, and they've gone through a period of time where there was a downturn in business. Okay. Nothing to do with them. It was the market. They know that because the market that they're in has all reported a downturn. And they're pretty okay with this because they understand how the mind works, and they know that their competitors will not be understanding that. So they see this as an opportunity. They see this as a competitive edge compared to their competitors who do not see this. So if you're in a leadership position and you're interested in dealing well with uncertainty, get clear about how your mind works. Do the online course, get an understanding of that, and you'll have your competitive edge.
Love
Awesome.
it. I absolutely love it. In fact, I'm gonna have that written on my office wall. That principle of, you have in your brain all the answers.
Well, I read something. Here's a slight development of that idea, right? When you understand how the mind works, you know that you don't know the thinking you're going to have in the future, right? Now, if you stop for a moment and really think about that, that's so powerful.
Hi, so we just wanted to stop the podcast for just a few seconds to introduce you to our HQ community. It's for bold solopreneurs and small business owners who are tired of doing things on their own, because let's face it, success is a team sport.
We've got a great community already together of brilliant people. They are kind, they are interesting, they are knowledgeable, and they are already supporting each other. What we've seen in the group in just the last few weeks has been really incredible. So if you want to join us, it is the place to be.
Find out more and join now. www.qbranch.consulting/HQ. Remember, success is a team sport. Now back to the podcast.
You know now, right? You know that time when you wake up in the night and you're going, oh my God, there's all this going on. Yeah, we all have that. Don't tell me you don't, because I know
we do.
because everybody has that. But if you if you deeply know that you do not have the thinking right now to solve that problem, but you will have it, I tell you what, you go back to sleep better.
Yeah, I love that.
And I promise you, you'll have that. You'll have those answers. It might take a little time, but you'll have them. They'll turn up. Isn't it incredible that we can go to bed with a thought in our mind, a question in our mind, and wake up in the morning with the answer?
Oh yeah.
Well, how does that?
It's the shower. That's why I spend so long.
In the shower, in the morning, like it's. I don't know if it's because I've got creative space or like I've often wondered why it is, but it just. I get so many answers in the shower. It's crazy.
Do you want to know?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Why do you have answers? Why do you get answers in the shower? Well, we often talk about insight. Insight is that moment where you go, yeah, that little aha moment. The light bulb goes, yeah. There's something that kind of connects in the insight moment. And if you ask people where they have insights or when, guess what they say? In the shower. Yeah, they always say in the shower, or they sometimes say when they're running or they're in nature or something like that. Now, what's happening in the shower? Because then, by the way, what the mind does, because the mind is kind of simple, it's amazingly complex, but it's also simple. It says, insight, shower, therefore shower equal insight.
Yeah.
And that's what we then think. So the only time I'm ever going to get an insight is in the shower. But actually, it's not true. What's happening in those moments? Well, what's different when we're in the place when we're having a shower? Our mind it drops away from the habitual thinking that it's in. And actually, the shower is a really good example because there's just about enough for us to do to occupy our thinking away from our busy mind, but not too much for us to get too invested in it. So it's just quiet.
Yeah.
But the mind quietens down. And when the mind quietens down, it allows space for all those new thoughts to emerge. They're all there, all those new ideas, they're all there, but they never get a look in because we're too busy attending to the thinking that we're in. So when we create space, and the shower seems to be a way of creating some space, but we don't have to shower to create space. If we understand how the mind works, it just happens.
Yeah.
And when that space is created, the new thoughts can emerge. And that's what insight is.
Love that.
So insights tend to happen when the mind is in a quiet space. Not always, but they tend to happen there. So let's give ourselves a bit of a chance by creating that space in our minds to allow for new ideas.
And that's so, and that's such a great thing to learn, actually, because part of me had always thought it was my brain's way of going, I'm going to give you all the answers when you're in a space where you can't write them down.
Well, there may be some truth to that, right? Because if you're then writing them down, you get straight back into your head again.
Oh, that's true, actually. Yeah, I'd never thought of it like that. Yeah, good point.
Maybe it's smart.
Yeah.
Maybe your brain is smart.
Well, Jonathan, I could talk to you all day, but we're running out of time. But this has been such a great conversation. I've loved it, and I literally could talk to you all day. But it is my favorite part of the podcast now because I get to do my Desert Island Discs bit. And I would like you to give us one book, a piece of music, and a tool or framework that have really had massive impact for you that you'd like to share with our viewers and listeners.
That's great. I was thinking Desert Island Discs, actually. Well, I'm gonna slightly cheat.
Everybody does.
Everybody does, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to slightly cheat, but I'm going to give you two books. One is that one. Can you see that?
Do you want to know a secret?
Oh, yes.
That's written by my dear wife.
Oh, amazing.
It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And it's a book that describes the human condition in a really simple way. And it's written on the basis of children being able to understand it. But it's really simple. And it's got some beautiful pictures in it. And I love it. Nice big text.
Oh,
and great. What is your wife's name?
Marie Arimar. Ayrymar. I'll happily send you a link.
Great.
Very, very beautiful book. Genuinely, when I've read it, when I read it first time, and I've read it a few times, proofreading it and so on, I always end up feeling really nice at the end of it. And there's something sort of deeply warming about reading that. The other book that I would say has made the biggest difference to me personally is Autobiography of a Yogi. I don't know if you've heard that book by Mahansa Yogananda. It's a wonderful book of spiritual mystery.
Brilliant.
It's made a huge difference to me.
We will put links to both of those in the show notes down below for people.
Oh, thank you. Music. I play music. I play in a band, and I've played guitar for years. So it's an almost impossible question for me to answer that, because I just have so many different music loves. But I'm just going to throw out the latest one I'm loving. I'm loving Jacob Collier at the moment. Don't know if people often don't know who he is. There's a whole song called Little Blue by Jacob Collier. I think he's just got a wonderful kind of deep authenticity to his work, and also he's an amazing musician.
Amazing. We will definitely put a link to that as well.
You didn't cheat as much as some people on the music. They always cheat on the music and give the whole genre. So you did quite well.
I had a few other ideas, but I'll go with that one for now.
That's great.
And a framework and a tool. I'm going to cheat on this a little bit and say that I'm going to tell a story, and it's a quick story, which was when I first started understanding about how the mind works. People used to tell me there's no framework and there's no tool, and I said, yeah, well, we'll see about that. I'm going to create the first framework and the tool about understanding how the mind works. And I can tell you that I haven't, because there's no framework and there's no tool, because it's an understanding. So in a way, what I was going to say was that my best example of a framework and a tool is that there isn't one. Okay. However, that's not very satisfying for those people who like frameworks and tools. I think probably the most interesting framework and tool that I've worked with is transactional analysis. I think it's the parent-adult-child model, 1960s, Eric Berne. It's a great model. I think if you want to understand something, a little bit about the mind, that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And we're going to put links to your course and business in the show notes, but where else can people find you? Are you on LinkedIn or? Yeah,
I'm on LinkedIn, Jonathan Armes, Armes, Jonathan with an A. And the website, as you might put in the link, is capital-shift.com.
Great. All of that is in the show notes, people.
And we have a podcast series called Thought Intelligence as well.
Amazing. We will link to that as well. Always great to promote fellow podcasts. So
okay. It's been a great pleasure to be with you both. I've enjoyed it very much.
Thank you for reaching out, Jonathan. It's been awesome.
Yeah, we have as well. It's been a fantastic conversation, and I'm rather sad we've got to cut it there. But it has been brilliant.
I'm hoping we'll get down to the pub at some point when I'm up.
I think that's a great idea.
Yes, I think we'll come to you.
Yeah. Yes. Brilliant.
Cheers.
See you later.
Bye.
Oh, Jenny, your life's just one big drama. This was what my auntie said to me, and it inspired me to put all my dramas in one book. So if your life is full of drama, and I believe everyone's life is full of drama, this is the book with real stories, real struggles, real tools to navigate real life.